Hello friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Babygirl in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel friends in today's video. The movie we are going to talk about is called Babygirl. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you. I'm also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production, budget, box office, collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film. Storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So, let's start the video. Babygirl is a 2024 American erotic thriller film written, directed, and produced by Helena Rhine. The film stars Nicole Kidman as a high-powered CEO who puts her career and family on the line when she begins an affair with a much younger intern. Sophie Wilde and Antonio Banderas also star. Babygirl premiered at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on August 30, 2024, where Kidman won the Volpe Cup for Best Actress, followed by a premiere at the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival on September 10, 2024, with a wide theatrical release by A24 on December 25, 2024. It received positive reviews and became a box office success, grossing $64.6 million on a $20 million budget. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the National Board of Review, where Kidman was also awarded the Best Actress prize. Plot: Romy Mattis, the CEO of a robotic process automation company in New York City, is dissatisfied with her sex life with her husband, theater director Jacob. On the way to work one day, she is almost mauled by a dog until a young man stops and calms it down. He turns out to be Samuel, an intern at Romy's company who picks her as his mentor through the company's mentorship program. Samuel propositions Romy during a private meeting. She initially objects, but gives in and kisses him. Conflicted about the incident, the two later meet at a hotel. Romy expresses concern that she may be taking advantage of Samuel due to their power imbalance. But Samuel retorts that he is the one with the power, as he could get her fired with one phone call. The two have a sexual encounter with Samuel playing the role of a dominant partner, resulting in Romy having an intense orgasm, after which she sobs with deep conflict about her enjoyment of this experience. The two continue to meet at multiple rendezvous, their sexual affair gaining considerable intensity. Samuel continues to push boundaries. In one instance, he appears at Romy and Jacob's country home, ingratiating himself with the entire family under the pretense of returning a laptop Romy left at the office. Feeling disrespected, Romy lashes out at Samuel and orders him to never show up at her home again. In the ensuing argument, Samuel threatens to request a transfer to a different department, which Romy objects to, fearing she will be questioned about her role in his transfer request. As her stress continues to build, Romy eventually admits to Jacob that she has never experienced an orgasm with him. Desperate, Romy meets with Samuel to convince him to continue their affair. He agrees after she confirms her submission to him. Soon afterward, Samuel appears at her house uninvited again for her daughter's birthday party, having been brought by Esme, Romy's executive assistant who he is dating. Esme informs Romy that she knows about her affair with Samuel and implores her to end it, as she is one of the few high-ranking women in the company and needs to remain a respectable role model. Romy later confesses the affair to Jacob, but is dishonest about the nature of her and Samuel's relationship, instead describing it as a one-night stand with a stranger. She attempts to express her sexual needs to Jacob, but he is too distraught over her infidelity to listen. Jacob later finds Romy and Samuel together at their country house. He violently confronts Samuel before suffering a panic attack. Samuel calms him down before abruptly leaving. Encouraged by her teenage daughter Isabel, Romy decides to reconcile with Jacob. A board member informs Romy that Samuel has taken a new job in Japan. He asks if she had anything to do with Samuel leaving, implying that he knows about the affair, and invites her to his house. Disgusted, Romy firmly states that she is unafraid of him and orders him out. A while later, Romy and Jacob have rekindled their romance and sex life. At home, they reenact the type of rough sex that Samuel introduced to Romy, but she is only able to orgasm by imagining Samuel playing with the dog in the hotel room that both Romy and Samuel shared earlier in the film. Cast: Nicole Kidman as Romy Mattis, a CEO, Jacob's wife, Isabel and Nora's mother, and Samuel's employer and lover. Harris Dickinson as Samuel, Romy's intern and lover. Antonio Banderas as Jacob Mattis, a theater director, Romy's husband, and Isabel and Nora's father. Sophie Wilde as Esme Smith, Romy's assistant. Esther McGregor as Isabel Mattis, Romy and Jacob's daughter and Nora's older sister. Vaughn Riley as Nora Mattis, Romy and Jacob's daughter and Isabel's younger sister. Victor Slezak as Sebastian Missel, a board member. Leslie Silva as Hazel, an executive. Guy T. Janssen. Robert Ferrier. Bartley Booz as Tom. Anup Desai as Robert. Dolly Wells as therapist. Maxwell Whittington Cooper as Josh. Production. Development. It was announced in November 2023 that David Hinojosa of 2AM was going to produce the project alongside Helena Rachn of Man Up Films, with A24 financing the project. Julia O, Zach Nutman, and Christine D'Souza Gelb of 2AM served as executive producers. It was later revealed that Julia O would take on the producer role, contrary to earlier reports that she would serve as an executive producer. In addition to her role as producer, Helena Rachn directed the film from a screenplay she wrote. The project marked Ryan's second English-language feature film, both produced by A24. The original plan was to make a summer movie. However, it was changed to Christmas due to the impact of the 2023 WGA strike and 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike on the film's schedule. The film's workplace dynamics were influenced by cinematic elements from Indecent Proposal and Basic Instinct. The affair in the film was set in an American workplace because the stricter hierarchy and rules in the US compared to Europe was felt by the filmmaker to make such a relationship feel even more forbidden and taboo. Ryan was inspired to write the script after hearing about a woman who had never experienced an orgasm throughout her 25-year marriage. She added that her interest in exploring women's relationships with their bodies was a key motivator for making this movie. She also credited her passion for the erotic thrillers of the 1980s and 1990s, particularly those by directors Paul Verhoeven and Adrian Lyne, as the inspirational driving force behind her decision to make this film. Lizzie Talbot was hired as the intimacy coordinator. The film features a significant 24-year age gap between its lead characters, with Romy written as 49 and Samuel as 25. Interestingly, the real-life age difference between Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson was even greater. Ryan emphasized the importance of normalizing age gaps in relationships, particularly when women are the older partners, stating, "It should completely be normalized that the age gaps switch and that women have different relationships. We're not trapped in a box anymore." Dickinson noted that the limited pre-filming interaction between him and Kidman ultimately benefited the project, as it allowed them to build trust and work together with kindness, enhancing the authenticity of their on-screen dynamic. Kidman and Ryan built a strong bond while preparing for the film in New York, fostering trust and openness. They worked closely, revising scenes and sharing personal stories, creating a collaborative, intimate environment. Kidman credits Ryan's supportive approach for helping her embrace the emotional and physical vulnerability required for the role. Casting. In November 2023, Kidman, Dickinson, Antonio Banderas, Sophie Wilde, and Jean Reno were announced as part of the cast. Other cast members included John Senatiempo, Vaughn Riley, Victor Slezak, Anup Desai, and Maxwell Whittington Cooper. Esther McGregor was reported to star. Filming. Principal photography began in December 2023 in New York City and wrapped in February 2024. Music. Further information. Babygirl. On December 2, 2024, Sky Ferreira announced the release of Leash, a song written and co-produced by her for the soundtrack of the film. The film score was composed by Cristobal Tapia de Veer and was released digitally on December 25, 2024 through A24 Music. The film features INXS's 1988 single, Never Tear Us Apart. A24 struggled to secure the rights to the track, which Ryan complained about to Kidman, who personally secured the rights within a couple of days. Release. Theatrical Babygirl premiered at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on August 30, 2024. Following this, it was also premiered at the 49th Toronto International Film Festival on September 10, 2024. The film was initially set for a release in the United States and Canada on December 20, 2024, but the date was later shifted to December 25, 2024, for its theatrical debut. Home media. Babygirl was released in the United States on VOD on January 28, 2025. The film was released on Max on April 25, 2025. The movie was released on Blu-ray and 4K from A24 on March 18, 2025. Reception. Box office. Babygirl has grossed $28.1 million in the United States and Canada and $36.4 million in other territories for a total of $64.6 million worldwide. The film's break-even point was reported around $50 million. In the United States and Canada, Babygirl was released alongside Nosferatu, A Complete Unknown, and The Fire Inside, and was projected to gross around $7 million from 2,115 theaters in its 5-day opening weekend. The film made $1.5 million on its first day and then $1.3 million on its second. It went on to debut to $4.4 million in its opening weekend and a total of $7.3 million over the 5 days. Finishing in 7th, it then made $1.4 million on the first day of 2025, for a total of $10.5 million over its first 8 days of release. The film enjoyed a stronghold in its second weekend, dropping just 0.5% to $4.5 million. It fell by 31% and earned $3.1 million, finishing 8th in its third weekend with a reduction in theaters. The film dropped only 36% and earned a solid $1.9 million, finishing 11th in the fourth weekend despite losing 427 theaters and playing across just 1,460 theaters. In the UK and Ireland, where the film was released on January 10, 2025, it made $5.1 million from January 3, February 6, 2025, and placed 8th. The film achieved strong performance in international markets, with notable success in countries such as Ukraine, the Netherlands, Denmark, Poland, Romania, France, Spain, Belgium, and Luxembourg. The first 5 minutes of Helena Rayon's Babygirl tell you everything you need to know about Romy, Nicole Kidman, or at least everything relevant to her ensuing erotic adventure. Romy and her husband Jacob, Antonio Banderas, have sex, and it appears to be a mutually ecstatic experience. She then sneaks down the hallway to watch porn in the bathroom, finishing herself off in secret. This appears on the surface to be familiar erotic thriller territory, where unruly sexual impulses threaten to topple a perfect marriage, even though we've literally just seen that it is not perfect. Because Babygirl opens this way, we do not have to suffer through interminable scenes where Romy and Jacob are presented as a perfect couple, busy with work and children, unaware of the danger inside the perimeter of the proverbial white picket fence. Babygirl is sauvier than that. It's also funnier than that. Ryan is going after something a little bit deeper than woman's happy home life, destroyed by her uncontrollable sexual desires. Romy is the founder and CEO of a company that develops robotics for warehouse delivery systems, removing the need for humans. Jacob is a theater director rehearsing a production of Hedda Gabler, which is not coincidentally a urtext for women trapped in unhappy marriages. When characters have metaphor-heavy jobs, you know there's trouble in paradise. Babygirl wastes no time. Romy first sees Samuel, Harris Dickinson, on a crowded city sidewalk, taking control of an off-leash dog. She is riveted by his calm, firm gestures. Later that day, he is part of the cluster of interns brought into her office. He looks at her with a disturbing lack of subservience. He looks at her like he's an equal. His presence and his attitude throw her off. In their initial one-on-one interaction, Samuel tosses out the observation that he thinks she likes to be told what to do. The moment is shocking. His comment is so inappropriate, it knocks the wind out of her. He senses the truth she's been hiding and goes right for it, speaks right to it. He's not manipulative, he's straightforward. This is such unexpected behavior from an intern she can't gather up a defense. Besides, she's into it, and he knows it. Soon she's addicted to this thing with Samuel, all while being at war with her impulses. She doesn't understand sex as a game involving explicitly stated consent. It's totally foreign to her. Samuel has to explain the concept of consent to her. And let me tell you, his definition is better than Christian Gray's. Samuel gets it. Marlene Dietrich once observed, "In America, sex is an obsession. In other parts of the world, it's a fact." This explains a lot about America's schizophrenic relationship to sex and how this is reflected in American cinema. Our current cinematic moment is bafflingly sexless, which inhibits all kinds of genres, not just erotic ones. Juvenile sex humor is sometimes allowed. 50 Shades of Grey was deceptive. Yes, there was kinky sex, but it was legitimized by a wedding ceremony, showing a puritanical need to put a container around dark sexual impulses. The absence of sex is evidence of the obsession with it. If sex is just a fact, however, then it doesn't have the same threatening power. In Babygirl, both obsession and fact are in operation. To Romy, sex is an obsession. To Samuel, sex is a fact. This year's The Feeling That the Time for Doing Something Has Passed, written and directed by Joanna Arno, who also stars, is about a submissive woman, and it shows how it's really tough to find a dom who is not also a psycho, or just a jerk pretending to be a dom. The tone of Arno's film is extreme deadpan, whereas Babygirl's tone is that of a comic opera, but the frankness with which these things are discussed in both films is a breath of fresh air. Kidman plays Romy at a fever pitch, and she is very effective. But Harris Dickinson is the real star here. If Samuel wasn't portrayed in the exact right way, the whole delicate thing would fall apart. The performance is not really a revelation because Dickinson has been distinguishing himself from the moment he arrived back in 2017 in Eliza Hittman's Beach Rats, 2017. In Steve McClane's Postcards from London, Dickinson showed his willingness to appear in experimental material and, most importantly, to be objectified by the camera and others. He was the object of desire in that film, as well as in Xavier Dolan's Matthias and Maxime, where his aggressively hetero behavior hinted at protesting too much. With Triangle of Sadness, he played a male model, leaning into what was already obvious. In all films, he brought to the table a calm sense of being aware of what he looks like, aware people are looking at him, and he is fine with allowing it. This is a very rare quality in male actors. Richard Gere had it. In Scrapper, one of my favorite films of 2023, Dickinson played a young guy who abandoned his daughter at birth and returned when she was 12. Even though you could judge the character, he was such an open-faced, big, goofy guy, it was hard to be mad at him. Dickinson has reached another exciting level with Babygirl. We get only a few glimpses of Romy's childhood. She grew up in what she calls a commune cult and does EMDR therapy a couple of times a week. Trauma is implied, but not explained. Since this element is barely developed, it felt unnecessary and didn't really add to any understanding of Romy's motivations. To repeat, everything you need to know about Romy happens in the first 5 minutes. Cristobal Tapia de Vere's original score is symphonic and often gigantic, creating a portentous mood, which somehow manages to avoid self-seriousness. The needle drops are memorable, particularly the use of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart, and the scene where a shirtless post-coital Samuel holding a glass of scotch dances around the posh hotel room to George Michael's father figure, his movements slow and languid, aware he's on display, dancing to please himself, and knowing he's pleasing to her. The moment is mesmerizing. Babygirl is a high-wire act. It's a small miracle the film works as well as it does. Review: a Babygirl Romy Matis owns a duplex apartment in the city and a big house in the country. She has a doting husband, 2 adorable daughters, and a gilded career as the CEO of Tensile, a non-specific robot business that runs a successful warehouse delivery scheme. Romy, in the parlance of a women's glossy magazine, has it all, which naturally means that she wants something else, something more. Before long, she has embarked on a perilous affair with her office intern, jumping him in the gents to the strains of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart. Romy is played by Nicole Kidman, whose bright, bold performance nonetheless carries a top note of distress, as though she is not entirely convinced by everything she's signed up for. She is the star of Halina Regn's film, which premieres here in Venice and might have been this year's Tar, that other big drama about a powerful woman laid low, were it not so superficially pleased with itself, so thrilled by its own daring. Babygirl has some useful and occasionally provocative things to say about inter-office dynamics and sexual desire, but it delivers them with the clipped, perky professionalism of an annual corporate presentation. The film opens with an orgasm and closes with another, although it turns out that the first climax was faked, because Romy has never been truly satisfied by her spouse. She confesses to having dark thoughts, masturbates compulsively to her laptop, and hungers for an adventure to get her out of her rut. This explains why she's so drawn to Samuel, Harris Dickinson, a 20-something gopher at Tensile's New York office whose puckish self-assurance hangs just the right side of insolence. The intern wants her to mentor him. He wants whatever he can get. Arriving at work one morning, Romy sees him taming a wild dog on the street. Just maybe, she thinks, he can tame her as well. Like Romy's first climax, the picture is a burlesque, a performance, expertly done but suspect at its core. Rain, a Dutch-born director now based in New York, enjoyed a breakout hit with the punchy Bodies in 2022. But this film is less satisfying, and at times rather silly. Now Romy and Samuel are locked in a torrid and toxic affair. He is feeding her saucers of milk to the strains of George Michael's father figure, while her poor husband, Jacob, Antonio Banderas, is left wrangling the kids and trying to direct his latest off-Broadway show. The power balance shifts. Samuel starts to think he's the boss. He points out that he has a crucial hold over Romy and that all it would take is one phone call to instantly end her career. "Does it turn you on when I say that?" he asks with a grin. And she's so spun around by this point that yes, it probably does. Is it a spoiler to mention that Romy and Samuel's adventure doesn't necessarily end well? There is no neat happy ending for our lust-struck lovers. Just more mess, more stress, and eventually a screaming row beside the Christmas tree. Rain's drama deserves credit for its lack of cheap moralizing and suggests that even the most reckless affair can bring unforeseen benefits. But it's too little, too late, and for all its excited carnality and seesawing power struggles, the film's thrills feel machine-tooled and vacuum-packed. Babygirl rolls off the track looking almost as neat and anonymous as a box from Tensal's upstate delivery warehouse. One of the many reasons that sex scenes in movies have faded as a phenomenon is the omnipresence of pornography. When people can just click on their deepest kinks and favorite objects of desire, who needs the carefully staged R-rated erotic version? As if to acknowledge this, Babygirl, a drama about a dangerous office liaison written and directed by Helena Reichner, Bodies, 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 opens with a high-angle close-up of Nicole Kidman straddling an unseen man and panting with pleasure. It looks and sounds a lot like the kind of movie sex scene that would have once been described as hot. But as soon as the coupling is over, and the man, Antonio Banderas, as Kidman's husband, says, "I love you," we see Kidman escape to another room. Easy to do in their gargantuan Manhattan apartment, at which point she breathlessly lies down on the floor in front of her laptop and masturbates to a grungy piece of incest porn. The joke of this is that Kidman's character, Romy, is presented as a woman who has it all. She's the CEO of her own company, an e-commerce outfit called Tensal Automation, a kind of next-level Amazon that promises one-day delivery by using automated logistics, i.e., the entire warehouse is operated by robotics. She's got her nice, caring, supportive husband, who's a prominent New York theater director, as well as two vibrant teenage daughters, Esther McGregor and Vaughn Riley. And she's got her healthy, normal sex life, and her secret transgressive fantasies, which are what really get her off. In other words, she has it all. She just doesn't have it all in one place. Early on, we see Romy in the office and in the mission statement videos she makes for the company, where every upbeat word is market-tested, including a reference to how nurturing the company is, even though its all-robot premise basically results in putting people out of work. The way Romy sees it, she's liberating them from menial jobs. The movie offers up a sly take on what's happening in corporate culture today, though what gives that its kick is the way that it all connects to Romy's pent-up sexuality and to the forbidden office hookup that's about to ensnare her. Romy, with her friendly professional demeanor, her eyes glued to the information stream coming out of her phone, is the boss as highly functional control freak. What she's craving underneath it all is the kind of sexuality that's going to break that control apart. And the implication of Babygirl is that it isn't just Romy. The movie presents us with a society increasingly rooted in technology and the lockstep of corporate protocols, where everything is controlled, which just feeds everyone's desire to bust out of it. The young man who's going to ignite Romy's fantasies is Samuel Harris Dickinson, one of the company's new slate of interns. That's right. This is a movie about a 50-something boss who falls into an affair with a work dude who's barely out of college. If Babygirl had been made 20 years ago, the movie would probably have been conceived as a cougar fantasy. The first time Romy and Samuel saw each other, it would have been all about their animal magnetism. But Ryan does something shrewder than that. The two characters meet when the interns are given a tour of Tensal's sprawling lower Broadway office suite. They're paraded into Romy's office, at which point Samuel asks her an incredibly rude question about the company's robot premise. Dickinson, the gifted actor from The Iron Claw and Triangle of Sadness, his baby face set off by a jagged haircut, is like a more blunt-edged Austin Butler. His Samuel is telling Romy, before they've barely glanced at each other, "I make the rules by breaking yours." And that's what's sexy. These are great-looking actors. Yet in Babygirl, their chemistry is all about, only about, the promise of transgression. Each time Samuel sees Romy at the office, he confronts her with another casually hostile, negging remark. He shoots past all niceties and small talk. His flirting is an aggro assault, and that's why she can't resist it. The Babygirl turns into a shrewdly honest and entertaining movie about a flagrantly wrong sadomasochistic affair. In Bodies, 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 Ryan created a tone of overwrought satirical slasher pulp, but here she settles into a far more realistic mode and brings it off with flair. The movie is reminiscent at times of Fair Play, but it's also a tale of adultery that pushes genuine emotional buttons, the way Unfaithful did 20 years ago. And that's rooted in the fearless performance of Kidman. Straddling the identities of mother, boss, defiant adulterer, and trembling sexual supplicant, she's like a walking mood ring. Her Romy takes off from a long-standing, hidden reality that people who are hooked on wielding power can have primal fantasies of being sexually submissive. For decades, prominent male executives have been keeping B&D sex workers in business, but in movies, we haven't seen the corporate gender tables turned in quite this way. For a while, Babygirl comes on like a less glossy 9 2 weeks as Samuel breaks down Romy's defenses, notably in a scene where people from the office are having cocktails after work and he sends her over a drink of milk. He's saying, "You're my baby girl." And when she drinks it down, she's saying, "Yes, I am." When they meet in a hotel room, Kidman goes back and forth between submission and refusing to submit, and the play of emotions on her face is astonishing. She lets us see the erotic war that's tearing Romy apart. But, of course, what's dangerous about this affair isn't just the S&M kink of it. It's that Romy is trashing every corporate rule that now governs relationships in the workplace. And the shrewdest trick of the movie is the way Samuel uses those protocols and the breaking down of them to seduce Romy into crossing the line. The fact that she's having an affair with an intern from her own company, risking everything that she's built, is part of the turn-on. The spark plug of Kidman's performance is that she plays this sick recklessness as something fully human, the expression of a woman too compartmentalized to put the different parts of herself together. She's caught up in an erotic fever, but it's one that's laced with agony. Does it all come tumbling down? Babygirl has a conventional design, and one very good eye-candy needle drop, in which the tattooed Samuel Snake dances to George Michael's father figure. But one of the film's strengths is that it avoids the sort of roller coaster last act that we expect from an erotic thriller. There's an old-school moralism at work in movies like Fatal Attraction, where the characters are punished for their sins. Ryan is after something different. She's out to liberate characters who are too busy punishing themselves. Babygirl takes a few turns we don't expect, but that's because the movie's ambition isn't just to feed the thriller engine. It's to capture something genuine about women's erotic experience in the age of control. It's not even the raw sexual fervor, because we've seen it with Eyes Wide Shut. However, portraying a character with such a high level of class and authority, and swiftly exhibiting a submissive sexual position, such as getting on all fours and licking milk off a bowl or standing in the corner like a school child being punished without portraying it as humiliation, is a delicate balance that, frankly, no other actress can achieve. The ASI icon you see in every AMC ad, except for this one, for some reason, stars in about 5 or 6 projects a year and keeps proving her talent. There's a reason why she's being touted for Best Actress during the current awards season. This is her one-woman show. The film's excellent supporting cast also bolsters Kid's performance. Harris Dickinson truly understands the assignment as Samuel, the equivalent of a manic pixie, merci boy who can read people easily, but one you can't seem to figure out yourself. He has this type of seductive magnetism that allows Romy to figure out her freak, without ever teetering their dynamic toward romance, because that's truly not what this movie is. Besides Dickinson, the other younger cast members are fantastic. I like Tester McGregor's performance as Ram's rebellious lesbian daughter Isabel, who has a non-monogamous affair in the background. The brief conversations they share about Isabel's romantic life low-key inspire, if he not enable Ramy to explore her fun time with Samuel, even though Isabel has no idea what's going on. I also adore Sophie Wilde, who plays Ramy's assistant. And while at first she isn't given much to do, she single-handedly subverts the entire film with one scene that stayed with me since my first inebriated watch. Gen Z characters play a strong role in this, and the film follows a progressive affair while being open to being freaky. How can I forget Antonio Banderas as her husband Jacob? He's in all his usual swayness, yet combines his charm with a homey demeanor, enticing one to join Raimi's quest for pleasure. Even though he's literally Antonio Banderas, do you understand how good of a writer you must be to convince me that Antonio Banderas can't make Nicole Kidman finish Helena's mind? And the first 5 minutes of Helena Regan's Babygirl tell you everything you need to know about Raimi Nicole Kidman, or at least everything relevant to her ensuing erotic adventure. Raimi and her husband Jacob Antonio Banderas have sex, and it appears to be a mutually ecstatic experience. She then sneaks down the hallway to watch porn in the bathroom, finishing herself off in secret. This appears on the surface to be familiar erotic thriller territory, where unruly sexual impulses threaten to topple a perfect marriage. Even though we've literally just seen that it is not perfect because Babygirl opens this way, we do not have to suffer through interminable scenes where Rami and Jacob are presented as a perfect couple busy with work and children unaware of the danger inside the perimeter of the proverbial white picket fence. Babygirl is savvier than that. It's also funnier than that. Rain is going after something a little bit deeper than woman's happy home life. Destroyed by her uncontrollable sexual desires, Raimi is the founder and CEO of a company that develops robotics for warehouse delivery systems, removing the need for humans. Jacob is a theater director rehearsing a production of Hagobler, which is not coincidentally a text for women trapped in unhappy marriages. When characters have metaphor-heavy jobs, you know there's trouble in paradise. Babygirl wastes no time. Raimi first sees Samuel Paris Dickinson on a crowded city sidewalk taking control of an off-leash dog. She is riveted by his calm, firm gestures. Later that day, he is part of the cluster of interns brought into her office. He looks at her with a disturbing lack of subservience. He looks at her like he's an equal. His presence and his attitude throw her off. In their initial one-on-one interaction, Samuel tosses out the observation that he thinks she likes to be told what to do. The moment is shocking. His comment is so inappropriate, it knocks the wind out of her. He senses the truth she's been hiding and goes right for it, speaks right to it. He's not manipulative, he's straightforward. This is such unexpected behavior from an intern. She can't gather up a defense. Besides, she's into it, and he knows it soon. She's addicted to this thing with Samuel, all while being at war with her impulses. She doesn't understand sex as a game involving explicitly stated consent. It's totally foreign to her. Samuel has to explain the concept of consent to her. And let me tell you, his definition is better than Christian Grey. Samuel gets it. Marlene Dietrich once observed, "In America, sex is an obsession. In other parts of the world, it's a fact." This explains a lot about America's schizophrenic relationship to sex and how this is reflected in American cinema. Our current cinematic moment is bafflingly sexless, which inhibits all kinds of genres, not just erratic ones. Juvenile sex humor is sometimes allowed. 50 Shades of Grey was deceptive. Yes, there was kinky sex, but it was legitimized by a wedding ceremony, showing a puritanical need to put a container around dark sexual impulses. The absence of sex is evidence of the obsession with it. If sex is just a fact, however, then it doesn't have the same threatening power. In Babygirl, both obsession and fact are in operation. To Raimi, sex is an obsession. To Samuel, sex is a fact. This year's the feeling that the time for doing something has passed. Written and directed by Joanna Arno, who also stars, is about a submissive woman, and it shows how it's really tough to find a dam who is not also a psycho or just a jerk, pretending to be a dom. The tone of Arno's film is extreme deadpan, whereas Babygirl's tone is that of a comic opera, but the frankness with which these things are discussed in both films is a breath of fresh air. Kidman plays Rami at a fever pitch, and she is very effective. But Harris Dickinson is the real star here. If Samuel wasn't portrayed in the exact right way, the whole delicate thing would fall apart. The performance is not really a revelation, because Dickinson has been distinguishing himself from the moment. He arrived back in 2017 in Eliza Hittman's Beach Rats 2017. In Steve M. Land's Postcards from London, Dickinson showed his willingness to appear in experimental material and, most importantly, to be objectified by the camera and others. He was the object of desire in that film, as well as in Xavier Dolan's Matthias and Maxim, where his aggressively hit hero behavior hinted at protesting too much. With Triangle of Sadness, he played a male model leaning into what was already obvious. In all films, he brought to the table a calm sense of being aware of what he looks like, aware people are looking at him, and he is fine with allowing it. This is a very rare quality in male actors. Richard Gere had it in Scrapper, one of my favorite films of 2023. Dickinson played a young guy who abandoned his daughter at birth and returned when she was 12. Even though you could judge the character, he was such an open-faced, big, goofy guy. It was hard to be mad at him. Dickinson has reached another exciting level with Babygirl. We get only a few glimpses of Rami's childhood. She grew up in what she calls a commune cult and does EMDR therapy a couple of times a week. Trauma is implied, but not explained. Since this element is barely developed, it felt unnecessary and didn't really add to any understanding of Rami's motivations. To repeat, everything you need to know about Rami happens in this first 5 minutes. Crystal Tapia's original score is symphonic and often gigantic, creating a portentous mood which somehow manages to avoid self-cessed seriousness. The needle drops are memorable, particularly the use of INXS. Never Tear Us Apart, and the scene where a shirtless postco poet Samuel holding a glass of scotch dances around a posh hotel room to George Michael's father figure. His movement slow and languid, aware he's on display, dancing to please himself and knowing he's pleasing to her. The moment is mesmerizing. The erotic thriller is a lost art alongside screwball comedies and westerns. These types of films were made in spades during a certain point in time and took the world by storm. In the case of erotic thrillers, that time was the A80s and A90s. The way they shocked the world was by breaking societal stigmas, exploring sexual liberation, and tethering to the taboo and provocative to ease the audience into wanting more because it is out of the norm of reality. Once hidden and obscured, desires are now part of a mental chess game between two, or sometimes even more players who find ways to get what they want, either by manipulation and seduction, or the stripping of power or a change in roles and gender norms. At the best this subgenre has to offer explores this multifaceted psychological and physical breakdown. To quote Street Vincent, it is mass seduction and mass destruction via the rearrangement of a person's mind, body, and soul. Paul Verhoeven's A Basic Instinct. And the fourth man, Lawrence Kasdan's Body Heat, and so many others did that very thing of confounding the audience by secretly dissecting the frowned-upon societal norms of the times in which they were made. However, the ones made since that pair of the A80s and A90s lacked the expository feeling and psychological depth that made the classic or acclaimed erotic thrillers so enthralling, spicy, and complex. As with everything, there are always exceptions. As some of the sub-EG genre's masters are still producing, although not as effectively like the aforementioned Verhoeven with the Black Booka and Adrian Lyne with the Deep Water, a film that many rejected thoroughly. At the same time, I thought it was rather quite adept. However, they are not great examples of what erotic thrillers have to offer. At least to their standards, many have come and gone trying to capture what once was, but it wasn't until now that we got a proper erotic thriller with a modernist view with Helena Ra and superb and tightly constructed A Babygirl, Ra who teams up with A24 again. After Bodies has a key knife for depicting the high life of society, whether it is super rich, kids with nothing but fake friends in the aforementioned satirical whodunit, or a highballing CEO in her latest work. Her cinematic interpretation has heightened a notch to give it a little punch and interlace comedic bandering with dramatic notions to the story, slowly turning on itself by reconfiguring the dynamics within a group of characters. But it isn't exaggerated to the degree that it removes her film's humanity or hinders the mind games at play. Although she has 2 films under this modern American culture examination belt, her prior work has some of the same sensibilities via a look onto her home country, and with a more insider lens rather than the outsider one. She partakes in these 2 A24-backed features. Since she looks from the outside in, it creates a disparity between the many approaches her work might take. Much like Verhoeven himself in A Babygirl, this view paves the way for this story about a wealthy woman becoming seduced by her way younger internet to tap into the universal feeling of repressed desires and beauty conformities amidst aging through the key elements of which erotic thrillers consist. Think COFA Secretary A, but with A levels, and switch the brooding tone of Maggie Gyllenhaal's Leave Holloway for fulfillment and empowerment. This and much more makes Helena raging a baby girl up a tactful dramatic piece with Nicole Kidman, and Harris Dickinson delivering top performance as a cherry on top of the kinky sundae. A surprising turn and glimpses at a potential rise for erotic thrillers in today's age. In a Baby Girl, Nicole Kidman plays Rami, a wealthy CEO of a company in New York that has her living a lavish life in a townhouse with her 2 daughters, and husband, a theater director named Jacob Antonio Banderas. Through thick and thin, they have spent 20 years together during the ups and downs. The two are devoted to each other plenty. Rami and Jacob have built a life many dream of having and earned it through blood, sweat, and tears. At least in that regard, their relationship is flawless and seemingly perfect romantically and intimately. There are plenty of cracks of fractures that haven't been treated. In this 2-decade romance, Jacob hasn't been able to fulfill Rami sexually, never giving her an orgasm, one she has longed for. It has been frustrating for Rami that the man she loves, the father of her lovely daughters, can't please her on that side of the relationship. That is where the new young and handsome intern Samuel Harris Dickinson comes into play. As soon as he enters the picture, all eyes, including the camera, are on him, a target of desire for everyone around him. The camera knowingly so frames Dickens like such a token of pleasure, although with a subdued tone initially only to increase in intensity as the whole controlling baby. Gauze spices up, and the heat feels like a 4D experience. And so the 2 leading players in this ring of fire are introduced glazing each other from afar from head to toe. With just a look, man expresses everything going on in her mind. The confusion of desire is in a battle against her suppressed fantasies. Kidman plays Rami in this beginning strand with the strictness to her more poised and stiff while adopting a more playful persona later in the film, effortlessly weaving through the complex emotions and dynamics her character engages in. The Australian actress has had more than a handful of tricky roles with even trickier personalities. But when she plays characters such as Alicina Eyes Wide Shut, Gracina Dogville, or Evelynina Stoa, just to name a few, because this list is longer, that is when she is in her bag. These characters have dual or even chambleonic traits with suppressed or concealed emotions, allowing Kidman to slowly unearth the character from the grave they are in. The arduous sensation of being unable to express the longing or yearning contained inside. And her Rami is yet another addition to this medley. Needless to say, something starts to boil between Rami and Samuel, much like the aforementioned ADA secretary, albeit without the brooding tied to the relationships between Lee Holloway, Gyllenhaal, and Mr. Grey, James Spader, and their roles are reverse, Rami being the financial power. At the same time, Samuel has control emotionally. This switch from the regularly seen gender roles in neurotic thrillers, as well as the tethering between accepting and delivering pleasure, is one of the ways in which Raged and Give Us a Baby Girl. This modern glance at consent and desires, she questions such psychologically complex scenarios in which Samuel and Rami conjointly and separately explore and divulge their boundaries as they confront ethical and moral dilemmas. The 2-sided package that makes erotic thrillers contain Dapia is a film about comfort zones and moral judgments. The former helps express their yearning and rage absolves the latter in a key scene where Rami and her daughter converse and understand each other about the situation. The Dutch director also dissects today's society with Sophie Wilde's character, Azim Rami's assistant, and the personification of Genz's political correctness and moral compass. Just like Unibody's Bodies, Rage uses the contradictions and strictness of today's generation to smear the complexities of the affair Rami and Samuel have into a more present, playful context. Instead of influencers and rich kids, it is the play for power within the workplace relationships. It is in these scenarios where Baby Girl distances itself from the erotic thriller that came before, gaining a personality and uniqueness in the process. This revision of a last subgenre that many directors have tried to revive by breaking modern ideologies and the view on disruptive or acceptable behavior contains tons of layers. Even if by a single glance such is not the case, Rayent continues her streak of dissections of modern American society. Yet this time there's a more keen, fascinating look at the tricky topic that makes today's newsreels plenty by breaking the mold of a subgenre that was predominant before. Cozy crime is one thing. Is this a cozy erotic thriller? An apparently super transgressive exercise in workplace subdom roleplay. But that is weirdly without any actual emotional or corporate consequence, without the menace that was supposed to make it so exciting. Writer-director Helena Rayane gives us what looks like and in many ways is a sex-positive reboot of the 90s high-concept erotic thriller. You might set it alongside Barry Levinson's 1994 film Disclosure about sexual harassment with Michael Douglas and Day Moore, the twist or oped talking. Point in that case being that it was the woman harassing the man. Dr. Nicole Kidman plays Raimi, an inspirational CEO of a hugely successful company in the big city specializing in fulfillment center automated delivery systems. She is married to Jacob Antonio Banderas, a theater director currently working on a production of Hagabler Ibsen's play about an unhappy marriage with trendy Ivel Van Hove-type projections on screen. They have 2 teen daughters, one queer, one apparently straight. Rami and Jacob have a lot of sex, but she can only really climax by rushing off to another room straight afterwards and watching porn on her MacBook. Jacob doesn't seem to wonder where she's got to. Raimi's career is sailing along, and interestingly, she is absolutely upfront about the Botox she's getting and endures with motherly exasperation jibes from her daughter about resembling a dead fish. Raimi's comfortable world is rocked by meeting the glance of a hot. Her new intern called Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson, he impresses her by subduing a savage dog in the street that seemed about to attack Raimi, but doing this so easily, you might suspect some kind of scam cooked up with accomplices with amazing insolence and an expression of boan curiosity. Samuel comes onto her his per spidey sense, evidently, picking up on her frustration and unhappiness, and makes it clear he'd like something to happen where he's dominant, and she's submissive. Rami realizes that being dominated by a young intern whose career and life she could crash at any moment is very exciting, and Thea Amoraduli kicks off with the Gen Z dom, awarding his boss the unfeminist endearment Babygirl. As for Raimi's real-world power over him, Samuel hints at what might happen if he went to HR with what's been going on. But this is domination light. The supposed degradation is mostly signaled by the scuzziness of the hotels where they meet. She's presumably paying in one. Raimi actually has to pick a hair off the counterpane. Yeah, she sits down and stands up and goes into the corner and faces the wall when he says so. She has to get down on all fours and lap milk from a bowl. They have straight sex, but really a broken bar. That's it. We don't get into BDSM, we get nowhere near to. Needing a safe word, Babygirl is simply about age gap and the reversal of gender, power relations. And a further line is crossed out unsexually in that time-honored narrative device from the 90s Joe Esterhaus era when the secret lover shows up at the heroine's family country home on various unlikely pretexts. And so the film drifts along to a strangely implausible non-denouement with impermanent effects. She has all the backstory with work and family, and he is weirdly blank in ways that don't feel entirely intended. Raimi's ambitious assistant, played by Sophie Wilde from the Australian horror film Talk to Me, looks for a while as if she will provide a grit in the oyster, but it is not really forthcoming. Although any old-school ironized twist of culpability and shock might, of course, be coldly assessed for its implications in the online social media discourse, which is what happened to Emerald Fell's much more interesting, promising young woman. Kidman has previously played not the similar roles in upscale metropolitan locations in Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut and Jonathan Glazer's Birth. There is nobody better at playing elegant and soiled the copyrighty and sophisticated. But she and Dickinson can't deliver the erotic thrill of actual danger. A Babygirl is in UK cinemas from 10th of January and Australian cinemas from 30 January. So the story of this movie is about a woman who seems to have it all. Beautiful family, wonderful husband, and an amazing job. She runs her own company in robotics, yet she is attracted to her male and very forbidden relationship. Oh, you're here. Who is going to dominate her sexually, and this is their first long encounter in a hotel room, and she's all alone in there waiting for him. She's totally dressed up, and then he comes in underdressed, wearing a hoodie with some little plastic bag from some bodega, and the first thing he says is, "Oh, you're here." So he's not even impressed by the fact that she is there. It's what you're doing is wrong. Of course, that is also a power play. This whole movie is about power, control, surrender. And this scene particularly is very much about the power dynamics between our main characters. And what is very important to me in this scene is that the scene is a performance and a performance. The whole movie is about performing. The whole movie is about theater. It starts with a fake orgasm. It ends with a real orgasm. So we're continuously asking the audience, what is real and what is fake? And is it possible to become our authentic selves? And what does that mean exactly? I don't really know how to. What do you want? From me? Because you show up here, you don't know me. I'm a stranger dressed like this. You expect me to just look at you and not do anything? For this scene specifically, we really ask the actors to show that they are performing. Get on your knees. No. What? Get on your knees. Now, I'm no. So they are constantly going in and out of their character. And you can see Harris Dickinson, who plays this young intern. He's really experimenting with what is masculinity. Who am I allowed to be as a man in a day and age of consent? What am I allowed to do? How can I stay respectful but yet also dominate this woman, which he obviously asks for? I think I have power over you because I could make one call and you lose everything. And yet we see this woman who has so much power, and especially over this intern, but she chooses to be degraded by him. And to me, why am I doing this? Why am I telling this story? It's because I feel that total freedom and an actual liberation means that we should connect to our inner animalistic side. The moment we start to suppress the beast and we say, no, I don't have a beast. I'm going to do Botox. I'm going to sit in ice baths. I'm going to sit in oxygen chambers and do all the therapy that I can think of to create this perfect image of my identity, and then everybody will love me. That's, of course, a mistake. No, I don't like that. Not like that. Not like that. I don't like that. I don't want it. Like that. My movie is a cautionary tale of what happens when you deny that you have a darker side within you. This review was originally published out of the Venice Film Festival on September 7th, 2024. We are recirculating a time to a Babygirl streaming debut on Max. The most seductive sight a baby gorilla has to offer is Harris Dickinson wearing pleated dress pants and no shirt lifting, a robe-clad Nicole Kidman in his arms, while George Michael's father figure blasts on the soundtrack. I don't know that I can do justice to the disorienting appeal of this image. There are plenty of more straightforwardly sexy moments in writer-director Helena Rahn's movie, which is about a corporate CEO named Rami Kidman who embarks on a BDSM-tinged affair with an intern named Samuel Dickinson. A moments when the pair are so worked up they've whoa in a restroom, or when Samuel orders Rami to take off her gorgeous column dress while he looks on, or when the camera holds on Rami's shifting expressions as she comes apart during her first non-solo orgasm. But nothing gets at the unabashed nature of fab Babygirl's eroticism. Like that shot of Samuel tenderly cradling his lover like a child after having spent long hours holed up in a hotel room, together indulging in lovemaking and games of dominance and submission. It feels startlingly private. Two people discovering something about themselves in real time while we get the singular privilege of watching from the other side of the screen. Babygirl is being built in some corners as an erratic thriller, though it doesn't insist on the moral consequences that have traditionally been just as central to the subgenre as the steamy clenches. One of the many reasons that sex scenes in movies have faded as a phenomenon is the omnipresence of pornography, when people can just click on their deepest kinks and favorite objects of desire. Who needs a carefully staged R-rated erotic version as if to acknowledge this Babygirl, a drama about the dangerous office. Liaison and written and directed by Helena Rahn. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies opens with a high-angle close-up of Fankin straddling an unseen man and panting with pleasure. It looks and sounds a lot like the kind of movie sex scene that would have once been described as hot. But as soon as the coupling is over and the man A. Antonio Banderas as Kidman's husband AA says, "I love you," we see Kidman escape to another room, easy to do in their gargantuan Manhattan apartment, at which point she breathlessly lies down on the floor in front of her laptop and masturbates to a grungy piece of incest porn. The joke of this is that Kidman's character, Rami, is presented as a woman who has it all. She's the CEO of her own company, a e-commerce outfit called Tensile Automation, a kind of next-level Amazon that promises one-day delivery by using automated logistics. That is, the entire warehouse is operated by robotics. She's got her nice, caring, supportive husband, who's a prominent New York theater director, as well as two vibrant teenage daughters, Esther McGregor and Von Riley. And she's got her healthy, normal sex life, a broken bar, and her secret, transgressive fantasies, which are what really get her off. In other words, she has it all. She just doesn't have it all in one place. Early on, we see Remy in the office and in the mission statement videos she makes for the company, where every upbeat word is market-tested, including a reference to how nurturing the company is, even though it's all robot premise, basically results in putting people out of work. The way Rami sees it, she's liberating them from menial jobs. The movie offers up a slight take on what's happening in corporate culture today. Though what gives that its kick is the way that it all connects to Raimi's pent-up sexuality and to the forbidden office hookup that's about to ensnare her. Raimi with her friendly professional demeanor, her eyes glued to the information stream coming out of her phone as the boss is highly functional control freak. What she's craving underneath it all is the kind of sexuality that's going to break that control apart. And the implication of Babygirl is that it isn't just Raimi. The movie presents us with the society increasingly rooted in technology and the lockstep of corporate protocols where everything up is controlled, which just feeds everyone's desire to bust out of it. The young man who's going to ignite Raimi's fantasies is Samuel Harris Dickinson, one of the company's new slate of interns. That's right, this is a movie about a 50-something boss who falls into an affair with a work dude who's barely out of college. If Babygirl had been made 20 years ago, the movie would probably have been conceived as a cougar fantasy. The first time Raimi and Samuel saw each other, it would have been all about their animal magnetism. But Rain does something shrewd than that. The two characters meet when the interns are given a tour of Thansel's sprawling lower Broadway office suite. They're paraded into Rami's office, at which point Samuel asks her an incredibly rude question about the company's robot premise. Dickinson, the gifted actor, from the Iron Claw and Triangle of Sadness, his baby face set off by a jagged haircut, is like a more blunted Austin Butler. His Samuel is telling Raimi before they've barely glanced at each other, "I make the rules by breaking yours, and that's what's sexy." These are great-looking actors. Yet in Babygirl, their chemistry is all only about a promise of transgression. Each time Samuel sees Raimi at the office, he confronts her with another casually hostile, negging remark. He shoots past all niceties and small talk. His flirting is an aggro assault, and that's why she can't resist it. A Babygirl turns into a shrewdly honest and entertaining movie about a flagrantly wrong sadomasochistic affair in bodies. Bodies raging created a tone of over-out satirical slasher pulp. But here, she settles into a far more realistic mode and brings it off with flair. The movie is reminiscent at times of Fair Play, but it's also a tale of adultery that pushes genuine emotional buttons the way Unfaithful did 20 years ago. And that's rooted in the fearless performance of Kidman, straddling the identities of mother, boss, defiant, adulterer, and trembling sexual supplicant. She's like a walking mood ring. Hermie takes off from a long-standing hidden reality that people who are hooked on wielding power can have primal fantasies of being sexually submissive. For decades, prominent male executives have been keeping beady sex workers in business. But in movies, we haven't seen the corporate gender tables turned in quite this way. For a while, Babygirl comes on like a less glossy 9, A1/2 weeks as Samuel breaks down Raimi's defenses, notably in a scene where people from the office are having cocktails after work and he sends her over a drink, a broken bar of milk. He's saying, "You're my baby girl." And when she drinks it down, she's saying, "Yes, I am." When they meet in a hotel room, Kidman goes back and forth between submission and refusing to submit. And the play of emotions on her face is astonishing. She lets us see the erotic war that's tearing Raimi apart. But of course, what's dangerous about this affair isn't just the SM kink of it. It's that Raimi is trashing every corporate rule that now governs relationships in the workplace. And the shrewdest trick of the movie is the way Samuela used as those protocols and the breaking down of them to seduce Raimi into crossing the line. The fact that she's having an affair with an intern from her own company, risking everything that she's built, is part of the turn-on. The spark plug of Kidman's performance is that she plays this sick recklessness as something fully human. The expression of a woman too compartmentalized to put the different parts of herself together. She's caught up in an erotic fever, but it's one that's laced with agony. Does it all come tumbling down? Babygirl has a conventional design and one very good eye candy needle drop in which the tattooed Samuel Snake dances to George Michael's father figure. But one of the film's strengths is that it avoids the sort of roller coaster last act that we expect from an erotic thriller. There's an old school moralism at work in movies like Fatal Attraction, where the characters are punished for their sins. Rage is after something different. Hey, she's out to liberate characters who are too busy punishing themselves. Babygirl takes a few turns we don't expect, but that's because the movie's ambition isn't just to feed the thriller engine. It's to capture something genuine about women's erratic experience in the age of control. The film follows Raimi, Mathesy, Nicole Kidman at the Hours, a successful career woman who has seemingly achieved everything. She's the CEO of a Manhattan robotics company. She's happily married to a loving husband, Jacob Antonio Banderas, Evita. The Mask of Sorrow, and has 2 teenage daughters, Isabel, Esther McGregor, A. Bleeding Love, The Room Next Door, and Nora Von Riley at The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. There's an area of Raimi's life that has always been lacking. However, she's never felt satisfied sexually or been able to explore her need to be submissively dominated, as Jacob refuses to indulge in such sexual behavior. Enter Samuel Paris Dickinson, a triangle of sadness, where the Crad Singh, a perceptive young intern who follows a vibe he's sensing from Raimi and starts subtly challenging her boundaries. It's not long before the electricity between them ignites into a toward secret relationship, as the controlling Samuel nicknames her baby G. Lee, a name he uses only when she's met his approval. Lay and Raimi at last unbridles her long-suppressed desires. It would be very easy to dismiss a baby Gorilla as another tawdry affair movie, and frankly, if it had been made by a man, it very likely would be. But writer-director Helena Rabadi's Bodies is going for something deeper. This is a sex-positive feminist look at the way society teaches women to approach their role in the act of sex, and it's a story of self-discovery. Similar themes were explored in the 2022 Ace and Danza Good Luck to You, Leo Grant A., which was also directed by woman. And unless you're our next vice president, it's hard to argue that female filmmakers being supported in telling such stories that lead to open discussion is overdue. It's also a provocative and intriguing choice to explore more complex and taboo sexual dynamics in a non-judgmental, thoughtful way that just possibly may not have been definitively captured in a 50 Shades of Grey. It may not be comfortable for everyone. It certainly wasn't for me. And yet that doesn't mean it should be. Dismissed. Kidman's fearless performance is spellbinding and impossible to look away from, as it is often awkward to watch, and it may now hurry, second Oscar. Dickinson, a magnetic and interesting young actor, is quite a presence here, definitely commanding the screen and making his character far more believable than I expected him to be. I must admit that I found myself tangentially distracted by some of the casting. For example, the choice to have Ewan McGregor's daughter play Kidman's daughter made my mind jump frequently. Jump to a Moulin Rouge, and whenever I considered that Kidman spent 11 years married to Tom Cruise, I found it easy to buy. That submission was her thing, and also that she'd never been properly satisfied. But where the movie lost me was in the casting of Bandura as Jacob. I can remember when 80% of the women and at least 20% of the men I hung out with were instantly brought to orgasm simply by his accent, much less by sharing a bed with him for decades. But I digress. The ensemble is stellar all around, but there's no question that it's Kidman's show all the way through. Babygirl may fall more into the category of a movie I admired than one I thoroughly enjoyed. Yet there's no denying that it provoked response. A lot of thinking and some fascinating conversations I'll eventually have as soon as I find someone I'm not terrified to talk about it with. It's a bold and penetrating price of art. I regretted the choice of that word even before I typed it, and one of the most daring films I've seen in some time, a Patrick Gibbs Raimi. Mathesy owns a duplex apartment in the city and a big house in the country. She has a doting husband, 2 adorable daughters, and a gilded career as the CEO of Tencel, a non-specific robot business that runs a successful warehouse delivery scheme. Raimi A in the parliament of a women's glossy magazine. I has it all, which naturally means that she wants something else, something more. Before long, she has embarked on a perilous affair with her office intern, jumping him in the gents to the strains of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart. Raimi is played by Nicole Kidman, whose bright, bold performance nonetheless carries a top note of distress, as though she is not entirely convinced by everything she signed up for. She is the star of Helena Rain's film, which premieres here in Venice, and might have been at this year's tilde-inverted exclamation mark, right? That other big drama about a powerful woman laid low, a were it not so superficially pleased with itself, so thrilled by its own daring. Babygirl has some useful and occasionally provocative things to say about inter-office dynamics and sexual desire, but it delivers them with the clipped, perky professionalism of an annual UAL corporate presentation. The film opens with an orgasm and closes with another, although it turns out that the first climax was faked because Raimi has never been truly satisfied by her spouse. She confesses to having dark thoughts masturbates compulsively to her laptop, and hungers for an adventure to get her out of her rut. This explains why she's so drawn to Samuel Paris Dickinson, a 20-something gopher at Densel's New York office, whose puckish self-assurance hangs just the right side of insolence. The intern wants her to mentor him. He wants whatever he can get. Arriving at work one morning, Rami sees him taming a wild dog on the street. Just maybe, she thinks he can tame her as well, like Rami's first. Climax. The picture is a burlesque, a performance expertly done but suspect at its core. Rage, a Dutch-born director now based in New York, enjoyed a breakout hit with The Punch Eye of Body's Body in 2022. But this film is less satisfying and at times rather silly. Now Rami and Samuel are locked in a torrid and toxic affair. He is feeding her saucers of milk to the strains of George Michael's father figure, while her poor husband Jacob. Antonio Banderas is left wrangling the kids and trying to direct his latest off-Broadway show. The power balance shifts. Samuel starts to think he's the boss. He points out that he has a crucial hold over Rami, and that all it would take is one phone call to instantly end her career. "Does it turn you on when I say that?" he asks with a grenade, and she's so spun around by this point that yes, it probably does. Is it a spoiler to mention that Rami and Samuel's adventure doesn't necessarily end well? There is no neat happy ending for our lust-struck lovers, just more mess, more stress, and eventually a screaming robe beside the Christmas tree. Ron's drama deserves credit for its lack of cheap moralizing and suggests that even the most reckless affair can bring unforeseen benefits, but it's too little, too late. And for all its excited carnality and seesawing power struggles, the film's thrills fuel. Machine-told and vacuum-packed, Babygirl rolls off the track looking almost as neat and anonymous as a box from Tensel's upstate delivery warehouse. I was never drawn to the premise of this movie, but I decided to check it out since I had an extra AMC pass for the week. Babygirl has some skill behind the camera for sure. Director Helena Rage knows how to create atmosphere during a scene. When intensity is needed, we get it. When tension is needed, we get it. That is true. Throughout the story, as certain scenes require a specific mood in order to maintain seriousness. Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson both commit to the premise, which would have appeared even sillier without them. They both commit to some unsettling moments that would never be shared on screen unless it's in a film like this. Credit to them for taking such risky roles and adding something challenging to their resume. Unfortunately, Babygirl is one of those films that fulfilled the questionable elements of the plot I was worried about. I didn't enjoy the premise at all, where jeopardizing a stable and loving relationship for a steamy fling is encouraged. Movies like this seem to be more prominent now, where sexual promiscuity and infidelity are more mainstream in film. The film presents such ideas in a way that romanticizes large age gaps and unfaithfulness in the name of sexual freedom. There are so many ideas within the premise that I found icky, especially one of putting family in jeopardy. But the filmmakers also give Kidman's daughter in the film a similar dilemma where her partner is unknowingly being cheated on for a fling that's just for fun. For me, this is a film I won't revisit due to the attempted normalization of encouraging sexual liberation through deceit and manipulation. Not only is the premise gross, but the execution is surprisingly poor. There are a handful of dialogue exchanges that are downright laughable. They feel rushed and improperly set up, eliciting a few out-loud chuckles from myself. The affair begins very quickly and doesn't seem organic to what each character was feeling at the time. Each dialogue exchange between Kidman and Dickinson feels awkward and forced. They didn't seem to have a natural chemistry, at least with the way their characters are portrayed. Dickinson's character isn't given much insight, so his role in the events feels less important. We at least get to understand Kidman's perspective and how she got roped into such a dilemma. The steamy sex scenes are also executed in a clunky way. They aren't as intoxicating as the premise would lead audiences to believe. They lack intensity, instead favoring the wonky exchanges they have to establish sexual dominance over one another. Even the goofy premise can't be executed properly. Yikes. Babygirl is one of those movies that fulfills the negative connotations attached to it. Everyone involved with the film has done better. Work as the execution of the story is reminiscent of driving over potholes. You'll get where you're going, but the drive is bumpy and uncomfortable. The erotic premise doesn't capitalize on what it promised viewers. I generally find stories like this off-putting, and the material wasn't strong enough to win me over. There are plenty of other films that are worthy of checking out before awards season, but Babygirl isn't one of them. It's a hard skip for me. I really wanted to like Babygirl. According to the glowing reviews, it's an excellent film, and being contrarian about anything starring Nicole Kidman is basically illegal. But with so many great movies to watch this January, Conclave and AC2, and soon, at the brutalist, the only person owed an apology for dedicating 2 hours of their life toward the Oscar-winning actress' latest psychosexual drama is me. Babygirl tells the story of Rami, the founder and CEO of a successful robotics company, and her desire to temporarily escape her perfect family life for an unwise but not illegal liaison with her intern Samuel. Babygirl has been marketed as an extremely horny film. The press images are of its two lead actors at lips distance of her drinking a glass of milk, but it's mostly unresizing. Rami's husband, the wonderful Antonio, Banderas and Samuel respectively born and terrify her. The soundtrack is an odd mix of cult classics, INXS Robin, and White Lotus-style instrumentals. There are passages where Samua quite clearly blackmails Rami into sex. It's easy to feel sympathy for Rami's predicament. She doesn't want to hurt her husband's feelings, much less the perfect family they've built together. Their daughters are remarkably kind and emotionally intelligent. They have a penthouse on the Upper West Side and a gorgeous country home in what I assume is Massachusetts. What I found harder to wrap my head around was her affair, not because Samuel is cocky, disloyal, and aggravating. That's precisely what she is looking for. But because the sex they have together seems only marginally more interesting than the sex she's having with her husband. The hottest scene between her and Samuel is their first kiss, where the sense of transgression is at its most palpable. I found the much-hyped BDSM scenes quite boring, in one passage where he dances topless for her in a hotel room to the sound of George Michael's father figure, toe-curlingly awkward. The story also requires too much suspension of disbelief. Rami and Samuel's affair takes place after hours in hotel rooms across town. At no point is it revealed who's paying for these. One can only assume Rami, although an exploration of how that played into their dynamic would have been interesting. Then there's the question of how on earth she finds a time for a CEO. She seems to do very little work. Also, when does she ever sleep? At one point, Rami and Sam end up at a literal RA, which, despite Kidman's a professed fondness for a mad night out, is so far removed from what her character would do in special circumstances. You cannot help but feel the scene is there as a shoe in something to be talked about by pundits and kid worshippers. The ham-fisted and sometimes lazy approach of filmmaker Helena Robb Layton, Have You Seen Me? Symbolism coupled with major plot holes is made bearable only by the dazzling performances of its actors. Achieve among them, Kidman will earn a Golden Globe nomination for her role. Babygirl is pulp fiction at best in terms of narrative. It is nothing more than a stillbirth devoid of character development and depth. Erotically, its understanding of BDSASM dynamics is nonsense, at least for those who have ever been in such a relationship. And as a thriller, it's barely a strain on the nerves and one's convictions. Babygirl is a Hollywood crap at worst day. Indeed it is. But I'm not going to talk about camera technique or anything like that. In this piece, I am going to show you how badly a Babygirl even failed to use the basic narrative principles that work to build a proper story. Rami Nicole Kidman is a CEO, a wealthy, middle-aged woman. Her husband Jacob Antonio Banderas is kind but boring. He fails to meet Rami's fantasies. Later in the film, we find out that he's never brought her to orgasm in their 19 years of marriage. Eventually, Rami begins to fulfill her desires with Samuel Dickinson, an intern who works at her company. But perhaps Rami lives in a world with no men. I can't think of any other explanation for her spending 19 years with fake orgasms, still being able to keep her urges well controlled, and then falling for the first attractive young man she encounters. How on earth could a woman as powerful and socially savvy as Rami not have ever met an attractive and dominant man like Samuel? And if she did, how did she manage to control her urges all these years? And why can't she now? In fact, it can happen to anyone. We cannot judge people for not being able to answer such questions, nor does anyone owe us the answers about their own lives. And yes, nobody has to be consistent or strong-willed. But film characters are not this or that person. They are part of a narrative. We must judge them. We must judge them so that we can understand and experience the narrative. Well, it's Judgment Day. However, the film's explanation for Rami's transformation is far from convincing. Add the action shifts to the street. It's Samuel easily taming a vicious dog on the street. Rami witnesses this moment. Rami seems to believe that Samuel must have been the first man to tame a dog. So, she is immediately charmed by him. Ow, her face says, I wish he could tame me too. Yet Samuel should not even be considered a person. We do not really know him, since his name, etymologically, means the name of God. We can imagine that he has been sent down from heaven. Can't we? Indeed, he comes into Rami's life like a revelation. We know nothing of his past or his possible future. He doesn't even have the ambition to rise in the company. It's as if he's on a mission from God to seduce Rami. This is Samuel's only purpose in this narrative. A character created out of nothing, just for Rami. And it also conveys the subtext that a woman, no matter how powerful she is in her career, is so equal, instinct, and in a second it does it unintentionally, which is even worse. It's a demonstration of incompetence. The other characters are no different from Samuel. They are all nothing more than decorations. What slightly distinguishes Samuel from the others is that he is sanctified with a kind of biblical anecdote at the dog scene. Thus he transforms into a kingmaker. Yet is he again who dethrones a king? He makes his boss Rami bow down to her knees. His presence, like that of the biblical figures, is simply a means of explaining something. Rami's desire to be dominated materializes, dawns, and a costume takes a shape, however you want to put it. And Samuel. Samuel is a person is irrelevant. Even the fact that he has a name is a miracle. Samuel is nothing. Buddha an object of desire in this state. Rami's husband Jacob become ascetany, object of disgust. This is precisely why even Rami cannot truly exist in the film. She has no real conflicts because there are no deep, three-dimensional, realistic characters opposing her. All roads lead to Rami, and no character in the story would exist without her. Moreover, Rami herself has no past. We can't even understand why she never revealed her fantasies to her husband Jacob all these years. The narrative is, therefore, trapped in Rami's unconvincing inner crisis. Rami is a protagonist. That makes no sense and is absolutely imperceptible. In truth, the only real person in this film is Nicole Kidman. Look out a window and try not to distinguish the first two people you see. You'll likely fail because different individuals walk, look, and speak differently. Now try to distinguish Nicole Kidman's character, The Perfect Couple, a miniseries, released just a few months before your baby gay from Rami. Good luck. This is as much a failure of writing as it is of Nicole Kidman's bad acting, where instead of embodying the character, she grafts the character onto herself. Let's all admit it together. Kidman has never been a good actress anyway, and when her mediocre acting is combined with poor writing and directing, the end product is nothing to Babygirl. Even if you don't agree with me so far, you might be interested in what follows in this Babygirl review, because I will also take a look at the film's conception of BDSM. Relationships and eroticism is always exciting. The problem is that the lack of vivid characters and relationships also hinders the film's eroticism. A common misconception about eroticism A and BDSM in the case of Fab Babygula A is that touching of flesh and some nudity is enough. I first discovered that this was not the case when I was arguing with a communist who was much more old-fashioned than me. He argued that BDSM was a capitalist form of intimacy. I found this rather unconvincing. And after doing some research of my own, I learned that BDSM practices actually way predate Capitalist Society Anonymous in her renowned book of the History Arts of the E. Dominatrix traces the A dominatrix archetype back to the Sumerian goddess, Anna. Indeed, in the surviving ancient texts, Anna is portrayed as a goddess who makes kings bow down to her, and the rituals to worship her depict practices that are now considered a kinky, such as cross-dressing, forced feminization, and corporal punishment. Of course, this phenomenon should not be misinterpreted. BDSM is a modern concept of sexuality, but the practices it encompasses have evolved from prehistoric times to today. Like everything else, the history of kissing isn't much different. In a sense, could the history of modern sexuality be seen as a fragmentation and reconstruction of ancient rituals? From this perspective, you realize that no form of eroticism is independent of human relationships. It is a fellow traveler on the same road as humans. History, evolution, and socialization. However, a baby gay is not aware that all kinks are also relationships. That is why its season depicts the do-sub relationship as an SCA tilde diarist, ni. While it almost completely disregards the emotional burden on the Dom Samuel, it reduces that of the sub-A. Rami, who is in an extremely strong position to nothing more than a Mexican called a sack of love. Note that Throughout the film, neither Samuel's nor Raimi's emotional balance is broken by the contrast between their positions in life and in their dominant sub-experience. What breaks this balance for them is the exposure of their hidden relationship. We see no real impact of the sub and dom relationship they have established on their personalities. They end up being the same personalities they started out as. Furthermore, anyone who has experienced this kind of sexuality recognizes that there is indeed a ritual aspect to it. Every kneeling, I suppose, is somehow a reminder of the goddess in Anna. Babygirl's depiction of the BDSM relationship lacks such visualization. No rhythm, no ascent, no climax. In a way, it reproduces vanilla sex. In any case, a Babygirl's approach to BDSMA and eroticism in general is completely superficial and unrealistic. Like its characters, the film's eroticism is pretty shallow. How could it be otherwise? After all, it's two cardboard cutouts being kinky, not individuals, with human depth. Picture an erotic drama starring Nicole Kidman as a sleekly dressed boss of a New York robotics firm. Her husband is a swarthy theater director, played by Antonio Banderas. But even though their love-making is as passionate as ever, she yearns for something more transgressive. So when a handsome and cocky young intern, played by Dickinson, senses what's on her mind, the pair of them are soon putting her job and her marriage at risk by making illicit use of the company's soundproof offices. That's a fair description of Babygirl, a new film. Written, directed, and produced by Helena Ra, the maker of Fab's Bodies, Z Bodies. But your mental image of its steamy going-on might not match what's on screen. What RA does so craftily is to examine what the situation might actually be like in all its messy complexity. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies showed how a country house murder mystery might play out if the protagonists were narcissistic numbskulls. Babygirl, which premiered at the Avenos Film Festival on Thursday, is like a glossy 1980s Adrian Lyne thriller with the gloss scrapped off to expose the mixed-up contradictory human beings underneath. None is more mixed up than Kidman's character, Raimi. She is admired at work for being composed, driven, and nearly as robotic as the machines that zip around her company's huge warehouses. At home, she appears to be a devoted wife to her husband, Jacob, and a loving mother to their two daughters. But Rayant wastes no time in revealing that after Raimi has had sex with Jacob. She nips off to another room to watch domination-based pornography on her laptop. She spent her childhood in cults and communes, it turns out, which may have affected her views of what constitutes a healthy relationship. Meanwhile, Dickinson's character Samuel is neither a swore seducer nor a naive youngster, but a hard-to-pin-down combination of the two. Sometimes he's almost psychotically confident and commanding, and sometimes he's and tongue-tied, often within the same scene. Once these two lost souls shuffle awkwardly into an affair, there is no smoky saxophone on the soundtrack, and there are no lingering shots of smooth, shiny skin. Rant's raw, jagged, indie-style film has all the scenes you would expect if Babygirl were a standard Hollywood neo-near thriller. The intern, turning up at the family's weekend retreat, a co-worker finding out about the die-and-say, but each time Rage explores the undignified reality behind the glamour. Raimi is seen having Botox injections, struggling to squeeze into a skin-tight dress, and interrupting an encounter in a hotel room because she is afraid she is going to pee on the carpet. Kidman's lack of vanity in these scenes makes this her bravest and best performance in quite some time. The shrewd screenplay also notes how times have changed since Michael Douglas's characters kept to having advised flingza in the 1980s and 1990s. Raimi and Samuel's dangerous lazen, and maybe based on her doing everything he tells her to do, but he's keen to discuss the company's human resources policies and the concept of consent before things go too far. The lurching rhythm of their relationship keeps you on edge, but it's also moving to see how tearful and confused Raimi can be, and it's darkly funny to see how she bluffs her way through her double life. Ultimately, though, Babygirl comes to seem genuinely romantic because Raimi and Samuel are fumbling their way towards a deeper understanding of each other. As uncomfortable as the film may be, it's clear that Rayan loves and respects her damaged characters, even if they're not sure of how they feel about themselves. Helena Ra's 2022 English language debut, A Bodies, 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 was a slender but enjoyably nasty slasher who done it that poked around in its Gen Z characters' heads. The Dutch director's more complex new film, A Babygirl, is an erotic thriller that again considers the ways in which young people are wired differently, knowing what they want and how to get it, but maybe also what the rest of us want too. That's more of a cheeky side note. However, in the story of a middle-aged woman, played with physical and psychological fearlessness by Nicole Kidman of finding liberation, by surrendering to her repressed desires. Sexy, dark, and unpredictable with a tone that mixes tension and caustic humor. The movie occupies a thematic landscape not so distant from Ron's 2019 debut feature, A Instinct, about a female prison therapist drawn into a risky infatuation with the rapist. As in that film, A Babygirl repeatedly asks who's in control in a dangerous game of seduction that keeps shifting the lines in its consideration of desire, gender roles, and power dynamics. There are also distinct shades of Steven Shainberg's A Secretary, though the perspective here is very much female. Kidman plays Rami Mathesy, CEO of a New York automation firm whose latest development is a goods delivery system for Amazon-type warehouses. She has 2 teenage daughters, Isabel, Esther McGregor, and Nora Von Riley, and a successful theater director husband, Jacob Antonio Banderas, whom she straddles naked and rides to a gasping climax in the attention-getting opening scene. We soon learned that part of Rami's role in the bedroom is performative when she flits down the hall after Jacob falls asleep and brings herself to orgasm watching daddy porn. In a later scene, she encourages her husband to be more aggressive in their sex play, which mostly makes him giggle with embarrassment. Right off the bat, Rage establishes that Rami, despite a few brittle edges, is no one's glitch, a Tilda copyright D picture of a driven businesswoman. Instead of the usual power suits, she wears looks cashmere wrap coats and sash collar dresses and blouses in floaty fabrics and delicate prints, subtly hinting that she's a woman of many layers. She also treats her staff decently, though her admiring executive assistant, as Sophie Wilde, is frustrated in her attempts to talk about her prospects for a promotion. Rami is all about careful control, so she's caught off guard when Samuel Paris Dickinson, a fresh recruit in the intern program, puts her on the spot with a question about the compatibility of automation and sustainability. Samuel has already caught her eye outside the office when she watches him step in and calm a barking dog that's off its leash and scaring everyone else on the sidewalk, while lift slightly on the nose. That dog incident will be wryly echoed in developments to come. Subsequent encounters with Samuel confirm in both his loose-bodied language and his blunt words that he's not intimidated by Ram's position. At the office holiday party, he informs her that he's chosen to partner with her in the mentor program, and despite her insistence that she's too busy to participate, Rami shows up for their scheduled 10-minute meeting, as Samuel questions her about how she got her start and what path brought her to where she is today. The subject of power comes up. He throws her for a loop when he casually observes, "I think you would like to be told what to do." That inappropriate remark ends the meeting, but Samuel blocks her at the door with a kiss. There's some amusing cat and mouse negotiation, including a hilariously impotent gesture from Samuel during an office drinks evening, but soon he gets down to business, leaving her a note summoning her with an address and time. That first station in a tacky hotel, clearly way below Rami's standards, shows her bristling and resisting Samuel's advances, claiming she's only there to put a stop to his behavior. But she's not convincing, and he's not deterred. Nor is he averse to the blackmail suggestion of an HR call to get the upper hand. Rage knowingly teases out the setup like a 90s sexual stalker thriller. Inspiration furthered by DP Jasper Wolf's sharp visuals, AET keeps upending those expectations. Working with great discipline and with zero timidity, the writer-director is unafraid to provoke feminist indignation by revealing Rami's complicity in her subjugation. Watching Kidman hike up her elegant gown to get on all fours and lap up a saucer of milk is both horrifying and funny. Samuel should by rights be a creep, but his cocky behavior is also awkward and uncertain, with nervous laughter when she doesn't immediately comply with his demands. As their sexual interests become more frequent, he shows sensitivity toward her vulnerabilities and an instinct for her needs, eventually exposing a few of his own. Dickinson's unforced intensity makes him a magnetic screen presence, and although he imbues Samuel with an element of threat, the actor never lets us mistake him for a predator or crazy control freak. He hasn't exuded this much and diluted sexuality sensing, from outrage to fear to ravenously lustful consent. The constant shifts in control during a steamy night they spend together at this time at a high-end hotel clearly chosen and paid for by Rami have her in submissive mode. 1. minute, swallowing her shame while stripping naked and sitting back in a plush robe the next, admiring Samuel as he dances shirtless in the middle of the room. The winking song choice, George. Michael's father figure is one of a handful of punchy needle drops, along with Robin's Dancing on My Own and ISS Never Tear Us Apart, that augment a fabulously eclectic mood-shaping score by chilling-born Canadian composer Crecile. To peer. Eventually, the stop-start clandestine relationship does threaten to destroy what's dearest to Rami at home when she makes a partial confession to Jacob, talking evasively of having dark thoughts in her head since she was a child and at work after it emerges that Samuel is also seeing as wild. The Australian discovery from A Talk to Me brings sly notes of humor to S's power play when she uses knowledge of her boyfriend's other relationship for her own advancement and starts blending corporate speak with virtue-signaling buzzwords like radical self-honesty. Someone's life normally gets destroyed in the standard template for movies like this. But here, even the most potentially explosive situations unfold in unanticipated ways. Notably when Jacob and Samuel come face-to-face in a physical clash in one of two moments, when Bandur's gentle, natured nice guy fires up into rage. Jacob makes the disgusted assumption that his wife, because of her power position, must be pulling the strings in a domination-subjugation arrangement. In one of the movie's thronest moments, Samuel casually informs him with unruffled Gen Z self. Assurance? No, that's an outdated idea about sexuality. There are lovely moments between Rami and her daughters, particularly Isabel, a cool young lesbian with a bleached mullet who fooled around on her own girlfriend and uses that experience to reassure her mother that forgiveness is attainable. The brief scene is a very sweet child-parent role reversal. Kidman also gets to show Chile command in a delicious encounter with an oily HR manager, Victor Les, who insinuates having compromising knowledge as a stepping stone to hooking up with Rami. Ultimately, A Baby Gula is about a woman coming to accept that her full spectrum of desires is legitimate and no cause for shame, and that control can be pleasurably elastic rather than something to be held in a vice-like grip. What makes it entertaining is not just the actor's skilled navigation of every tricky challenge, but also the script's refusal of judgment and rigid moral codes. The film doesn't go terribly deep and could stand to be 10 minutes shorter, but it's perverse, juicy fun of a kind we don't get much of anymore. Dutch actress turned director Helena Ra and burst onto the scene 2 years ago with The Bodies, a comedic slasher that showcased some of the best young talent the industry has to offer. While the A24-produced horror comedy made waves, much in part due to Rachel Sennett's hilarious line deliveries, it felt as if Rain's direction was far stronger than the screenplay at hand. Now with The Babygirl, her English-language film debut as both writer and director, Helena Rayan is able to flaunt just how much she has to offer. A Baby Gorilla follows high-powered CEO Rami, Mathisi Nicole Kidman, who seemingly has it all, a loving family, lavish homes in both the big city and the suburbs, and a robotics empire at her fingertips. While no one leads a perfect existence, it seems as though the predictable and routine-like sex life Rumi shares with her husband Jacob, Antonio Banderas, a committed theater director, is where things truly fall flat. Rami often turns to porn to finish the job, which is nothing to be ashamed of, but in the context of continuously faking enjoyment and evading communication, she plays just as big of a part in this unfulfilling pattern as her partner. Rami doesn't begin to verbaceously yearn for change until she meets Samuel Paris Dickinson, a significantly younger intern at her tech company whose boyish nature exudes from his mysterious aura and noticeably greased baby blue dress shirt. Samuel's remarkable ability to see right through the facade Rami constructed as a byproduct of being a high-ranking female CEO in a male-dominated industry impulsively draws her towards him. She knows exactly how this forbidden romance will end for them both. So Rami hesitates to concede to his allure, but that only heats things up. They're back, and forth in the office soon leads to an infatuating crush where just the swiftest glimpse is enough to send intoxicating amounts of adrenaline pumping through Rami's veins. Rami's committed assistant as Sophie Wildo Fatty, Talk to Me fame discreetly enrolls her in an internal scheme where Samuel has already chosen Rami as his mentor, so she can no longer avoid her one-on-one time with the young man to instinctually. Rami pushes back against Samuel's unprofessional advances a bit. She wants to give in, eventually she does, and there starts a sultry, frenzied affair, though we don't learn as much about Samuel. The magnetic draw that the pair share suggests they are both clinging to each other in a time of dire emotional need. Brick by brick, The young intern tears down Raimi's walls and makes her feel seen, consequently teaching her about the power of confidence. He is everything that her marriage lacks and everything that her lust demands. A day coming off her 2024 hot streak of starring Ina Expatsy, A Family Affair, and The Perfect Couple. Nicole Kidman is simply outstanding in A Babygirl and continues to demonstrate a fearless dedication to her craft as an actor. Her performance is a riveting display of raw vulnerability that breathes life into this modern woman with palpable facets. You can easily drift into her eyes, just like how Rami's mind often strays away from reality and into fantasy. Similarly, Paris, Dickinson the Ironclaw, a triangle of sadness, once again verifies why he is one of the industry's most talked about young stars. His interpretation of Samuel is intentionally steadfast and assured, acting as a foil to the quiet chaos of Raimi's journey toward gaining that conviction in her private life. Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson's chemistry is both unrelenting and equally calculated. Dina Babygirl. The effortless, impassioned tension shared between them can be cut with a knife, but always remains easily distinguishable as pure sexual desire rather than actual partnership. Female pleasure can often be put on the back burner, whether that be in on-screen relationships or reality. Even when it does get focused on, women's sexuality can be depicted in a demure manner that lacks authenticity and empathy. A Babygirl explores the disarray and befuddlement that result from the journey a woman goes on when defining her own sexual needs. In crafting this plot of love and lust, writer-director Halina Ryan displays an unwavering dedication to honesty that is nothing short of valiant. Raimi's decisions don't always make sense, but that makes this story feel all the more human. Babygirl isn't your average age gap or secret office romance tale. Additionally, it's more than your average erotic thriller. The power dynamics shift and evolve repeatedly, raising the stakes and making it hard to discern how drastically different the lives of every character will be as a result of the singular tour d'affaire when the credits begin to roll. As a White Lotus, a composer, a crystal to pure deer elevates the movie with the score reminiscent of his signature quirky sound yet unique in its primal breathiness. The score plays a key role in amping up the restlessness evoked by the script's tension from start to finish. All these meticulously crafted aspects of Fab Babygirl are combined with pitch-perfect pacing, making for a refined, sensual, and candid psychological exploration. Filmmaker Halina Ra is unabashed in her study of the taboo and what it means to be complexly imperfect. Catherine Brillant, subversive stylings crossed ways with a classic screwball romance. It might look something like Halina Rag. Girl, this charged tale of a female CEO embarking on an affair with her younger male intern bears the most outward resemblance to the late 20th century erotic thriller. Yet in spirit and subject, it's a true comedy of remarage. As the great scholar Stanley Cavell observed in his study of early sound, comedies that depicted adultery and tried to run afoul on the Hague Code by pledging allegiance to monogamous commitment. The joining of the sexual and the social is called marriage. A Babygirl's book, ending scenes of Nicole Kidman's Raimi, achieving orgasm within the confines of her relationship with Antonio Banderas Jacob, tell the full story of couple that learns to come together again after an affair similar to the resolution of many of those early comedies. The restoration of balance to Raimi and Jacob's relationship isn't the ultimate purpose here, because Ryan isn't working within a genre framework to uphold institutional values. The censorship to which rage and response isn't the one imposed upon such films, but rather the one the characters internalized. A Babygirl fixates on the transgression that becomes appealing when marriage is seen only as a social concession. The extramarital dalliance of Kidman's Raimi, the head of a robotics company, with Harris Dickinson's fresh-faced but uncommonly assertive Samuel holds up an X-ray to society. Through their affair, Rain illuminates how attitudes around gender, sexuality, age, class, and capitalism form the body politic. At the outset of the film, the pleasure gap separating Rami and Jacob has grown so wide that she turns to post-coital porn viewing to bring herself to climax. Decades of piled-up tinder from unsatisfying sex leaves her uniquely vulnerable to combust upon the slightest spark of desire. That's what Samuel provides. When before Rami realizes that the young man is in her employ, he protects her from a dog attack by luring the animal away with a cookie. For someone whose job entails talking in a lot of sanitized PR speak, he further beguiles Raimi, the archetype of the Shito, with the refreshing candor that he brings to their first professional interaction. In another universe, Raimi's willingness to engage with Samuel's nakedly flirtatious advances might have sent her down a path like the one taken by the anonymous character of Henrika had a Gabler, which Jacob, a Broadway theater director, happens to be putting on as Raimi and Samuel's tryst takes place by lips and reflected a reality where there was little escape but suicide for women who dared to challenge norms. Ron strives to reimagine a world where her protagonist can be normal even as she gives in to desires that some might deem abnormal. It's only fitting then that the dynamic through which Rami begins to regain control of her sensual drive is one where she submits to a dominant Samuel. The bedrock principle undergirding Rag's exploration of their carnal connection is always honesty. A baby gorilla makes for a stark contrast with rage-inspired film 2022's horror Kamja Bodies, who's young, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.